Have you ever made a choice that felt like losing yourself just to keep someone you love alive? Claire Bennett was only 27 when she stepped into a stone-cold mansion. No music, no family, just snow outside and silence inside, all to pay off her father's debt, all to secure care for the woman who raised her. Her marriage was not built on love. It was sealed by a contract. No vows, no kiss, no warmth. Elliot Drake, the man she married, was powerful, distant, sharp as winter air, and yet, that night, he gave her a key instead of taking her hand. What would you have done? Would you stay? Would you run? Would you open the locked doors of a house filled with secrets? This is not just a love story. It is a story about choices, and maybe somewhere in it, you will find a part of your own. Snow drifted slowly through the Vermont sky. It fell in soft layers over the hills, the trees, and the long gravel drive. A black car moved up the road, its tires crunching lightly over frozen stone. At the end of the path stood a stone house, large, silent, gray as the winter clouds above. Claire Bennett stepped out of the car. Her shoes sank slightly into the snow. The cold met her skin like a blade. She pulled the shawl tighter around her arms. The driver gave a nod. No words. No door opened for her. She was not a bride today. She was a transaction. She looked up at the house. There were no decorations, no guests, no music. Only the sound of wind moving through bare branches. No warmth. No sign that a wedding was about to take place. Her heart beat slowly, heavily, like the weight of what she had done had finally landed in her chest. She had signed the contract. She had agreed to the terms. She had told herself again and again that it was for her mother, for Emily, for survival. But that did not stop the ache. The front doors opened before she knocked. Inside, the house felt colder than outside. The floor was marble. The air had no scent. Staff moved quietly along the walls, heads down, hands folded. No one spoke to her. At the far end of the wide foyer, he stood, Elliot Drake, tall, still, dressed in black, like a shadow carved from stone. Claire had seen him once before, briefly, when the contract was signed. That meeting had lasted 13 minutes. He had barely looked at her. Not unkind, not cruel, just absent. Now, on their wedding day. He did not move. He did not smile. He did not speak. A man in a dark suit stepped between them. "I will begin," he said. There were no vows, no rings, no music, just a few legal words. Claire answered when asked. Her voice steady, though her hands trembled behind the shawl. 6 minutes later, it was done. When it was over, Elliot nodded once, then turned and walked away. No touch, no congratulations, no glance back. Claire remained standing in the silence. A woman approached, gray hair pulled into a tight bun, thin mouth, measured voice. "I am Mrs. Langston. I run the household. Mr. Drake asked me to bring you to your room." Claire followed her. The hallway was long, quiet. Oil paintings lined the walls. Storms at sea, dark skies, lost ships. Faces that looked out with eyes that never smiled. Everything here felt heavy. Old, like the house had stopped breathing a long time ago. They passed closed doors, one with a lock on the outside, another slightly ajar, revealing a dark piano against the far wall, dust on the lid, a broken string left hanging. "You may go anywhere on the east wing," Mrs. Langston said. "The west wing is private." Claire nodded. She wondered what was hidden behind those locked doors. But she did not ask. There was a silence here she did not want to disturb. They reached a door at the far end. "This is yours," the woman said, then left. Claire stepped inside. The room was large, neat, cold. A fire glowed behind glass, but gave no warmth. The bed was made. A small lamp glowed on the nightstand. The curtains were drawn tightly, though light still leaked through. There was an envelope with her name. She opened it. Inside was one key, and one sentence on a small piece of paper. "You may lock the door tonight, if you wish." Claire stared at it for a long time. She touched the key, felt its weight in her hand. Was this safety or a wall? Was it kindness or distance? She did not know. She placed the key on the table, then sat on the edge of the bed. This was her life now, chosen by circumstance, not by desire, traded peace of mind for protection, her freedom for her mother's medication, her future for Emily's stability. She had done what she must, what any daughter might do. But the truth was still hard to hold. But tonight, sitting in that quiet room, Claire felt something colder than the wind outside. It was not fear of Elliot. It was fear of the silence, the stillness of the house, the feeling of being swallowed by something too big, too quiet, too empty. She undressed, slowly, placed the wedding dress carefully into the wardrobe. Its lace sleeves hung limp, the hem still wet with melted snow. She put on the cotton robe laid out for her. Simple, white, like the dress, like everything in this house. Then she picked up the key again. She turned the lock. The sound was soft, but it echoed in her chest. She walked to the fireplace, held her hands near the glass. The warmth did not reach her skin. On the mantel, a clock ticked. That was the only sound. She looked out the tall window. Snow was falling still. The lake beyond the trees had frozen over. The trees were bare. The sky hung low. Everything here was still. She climbed into bed, pulled the covers to her chin, listened. No footsteps came, no knock at the door, just silence. And that, somehow, felt louder than anything else. She was married now. But completely alone. Before Vermont, before the stone house, before the silence, there was Loveland, a small town in Colorado, tucked between hills that turned gold every fall. The kind of place where kids still played in front yards and neighbors brought casseroles when someone got sick. Claire Bennett had lived there her whole life. Her world was made of secondhand books, wildflowers in glass jars, and the quiet rhythm of small-town living. Her father, Robert Bennett, worked at a modest law firm. He liked crossword puzzles and black coffee. Her mother, Lydia, was a part-time nurse with gentle hands and a soft voice. And then there was Emily, Claire's little sister, a bright spirit with questions that never stopped and eyes full of wonder, 10 years younger, but somehow older in ways Claire never understood. They were not wealthy, but they were close. They had enough laughter, enough love. Then came the accident. It happened on a Thursday. Rain slicked the roads. Her father's car never made it home. A guardrail gave way. The cliff was steep. The silence afterward was deeper than anything Claire had known. She was 17. Grief did not come all at once. It came in pieces. It came in unopened mail, in the empty chair at dinner, in the way her mother stopped singing to herself in the kitchen. Claire took over what she could. She walked Emily to school. She managed bills. She learned how to live without asking for help. She graduated, gave up the idea of college, took 2 jobs, day shift at the library, night shift at the bakery. It was not enough, but she tried anyway. When her mother got sick, The world grew smaller again. Lung cancer, stage 4. The doctors did not say it loudly, but the words still echoed in every hallway. Claire kept working. She filed insurance forms. She sold the car, then the jewelry, then the house. They moved into a rented room above the florist shop. The walls were thin. The heat worked only half the time. But Claire made it warm with old quilts and the smell of cinnamon tea. Emily started having nightmares. Lydia coughed through the night. Claire stopped sleeping. She stopped hoping. One afternoon, the florist handed her a letter. No return address. The envelope was thick and cream-colored. Inside, there was a typed message and a check. Your family has been reviewed. There is a way forward, if you are willing to listen. Claire stared at it for a long time. Then she folded it and put it in her coat pocket. She thought it was a joke. Until the man arrived. His name was Richard Hale, legal advisor for Drake Holdings. He wore a dark coat, leather gloves, and a look that never shifted. He asked to speak with her privately. They sat in the back room of the flower shop. Next to a rack of faded roses, he spoke clearly, directly. Elliot Drake, CEO of Drake Holdings, had taken interest in her family's situation. He had a proposal, not charity, a contract, a marriage, 1 year, no early termination, in return, full medical care for Lydia, full tuition for Emily, a trust fund at the end of the term. Claire blinked at him. She tried to understand the words, tried to imagine what kind of man would offer this, and why. Richard offered no details. Mr. Drake values privacy. Claire asked one question. Why me? Richard looked at her, calm, unshaken. Because he believes you will keep your word. She asked for time. 3 days. That night, she sat beside her mother's bed. Lydia's skin was pale, her breathing thin. Claire told her the truth. Lydia cried softly. You cannot give your life away for us, she whispered. Claire held her hand. I am not giving it away. I am trading it for time. Time for you. Time for Emily. The next morning, she found Emily at the kitchen table, drawing with broken crayons. She looked up and asked, Are we going to be okay? Claire nodded. Yes, we are. It was not a lie. Not exactly. She would make it true. The day before she left, she visited her father's grave. The stone was plain. His name. 2 dates. Nothing more. She knelt in the cold grass, traced her fingers over the carved letters. I am doing this because I do not know what else to do. The wind moved through the trees. No answer came. That night, she packed 1 suitcase. The contract had allowed only essentials. She packed warm clothes, her mother's favorite scarf, Emily's last drawing. She walked through the house slowly, touched the walls, memorized the creaks in the floor, the smell of fading lavender. She kissed Lydia on the forehead, whispered something only a daughter could say. She knelt beside Emily's bed. The girl was already half asleep. You are coming back soon, right? Emily mumbled. Claire smiled, her throat tight. I will. Promise. Claire hesitated, then nodded. Promise. But as she stepped out into the morning snow, carrying her small suitcase, Claire knew some promises were made only to give comfort, not because they could be kept. She did not feel brave. She felt like someone walking into a storm without a coat, but she kept walking because love, in its quietest form, is the willingness to lose yourself for someone else. The building rose from the heart of New York City like a shard of glass. Drake Holdings Tower stood at 63 stories, smooth, sharp, silent. It reflected the sky without letting it in. Claire had never seen anything so cold in daylight. She stood in the lobby, feeling impossibly small. The marble floor stretched endlessly beneath her. The ceilings rose like cathedral arches, and everyone moved with purpose. No one made eye contact. Richard Hale was waiting by the security desk, impeccably dressed, as always. A man carved from rules. He nodded once. This way, Miss Bennet. They stepped into a private elevator. No buttons, no music. The doors closed with a sigh. Claire clutched the small purse in her lap. Inside it were her ID, a pen, a folded list of questions she had written on the train. She had looked at those questions over and over, but none of them felt strong enough now. The elevator stopped at the 59th floor. When the doors opened, there was no reception desk, no assistants, just a hallway of matte steel and soft gray carpet. Richard walked ahead. Claire followed. At the end of the hall, a pair of dark wood doors stood open. Inside was a conference room, not large, but quiet, clean, bare. A long table, 6 chairs. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out across the city. The sky was pale, the buildings endless. And at the far end of the room, he stood. Elliot Drake. He wore a navy suit, no tie, shirt collar open. His posture was relaxed, but not careless. He did not smile. He did not move forward, but he looked at her. This time, he really looked. Claire felt it like a current across her skin. His eyes were gray. Not cold, exactly, but unreadable. Like the surface of still water. Richard gestured to a chair. "Shall we begin?" Claire sat. So did Elliot. No handshake, no greeting. A woman entered next, middle-aged, neat bun, crisp voice. She introduced herself as the contract witness. Then came the documents. Page after page. Claire read each line. She made herself go slowly. Every paragraph bound her tighter. Every clause echoed in her head. 12 months. No early termination. No public statement about the nature of the agreement. Shared living arrangements required for appearance. No legal claim to Drake Holdings, assets during or after the agreement. In exchange, full medical coverage for Lydia Bennett. Prepaid private education for Emily Bennett through undergraduate level. Release of trust fund at contract completion. Claire looked up. "May I ask a question?" Elliot nodded. "Barely." "Why?" The room paused. He did not blink. "Why this?" she continued. "Why marriage? Why not just offer a donation? Or a job? Or nothing at all?" He was quiet for a moment. Then answered, "I believe in controlled outcomes." His voice was low. "Precise. Control," she repeated. "Is that what this is?" He leaned back slightly. "You needed help. I offered a path, one that protects both parties." Claire swallowed hard. "And the wedding night?" she asked, more quietly. "There is a clause." Elliot looked at her again. This time his gaze softened. Just slightly. "You may interpret that clause as symbolic." Claire did not know what that meant, but she nodded. She picked up the pen. Her hand shook only once. She signed, each copy, initialed where marked. When it was done, Richard collected the pages. "Transport to Vermont has been arranged. Your departure is scheduled for tomorrow morning. A driver will meet you at Penn Station." Claire stood. Her legs felt like water. Elliot walked with her to the door. Just before she stepped into the hallway, he spoke again. His voice was quiet. "Just for her. This is not a punishment. Claire." She turned. "It feels like one." He paused, then said nothing. The elevator ride down was silent, The city outside the glass moved faster than her thoughts. When she stepped back onto the sidewalk, the cold hit her hard, but it was not the same cold as before. This one came from inside. That night, she did not sleep. She packed again. Just one suitcase. She folded her favorite sweater, her father's scarf, Emily's last birthday card. Then she sat at the edge of the bed. She looked at her hands. She had signed something irreversible. Not a marriage, not really, a choice, a surrender, or maybe a start. The train ride into Vermont felt like crossing into another life. The farther they went, the quieter the world became. Snow rested heavy on branches. Trees lined the tracks like guards made of ice. The sun never quite broke through the clouds. Claire sat by the window, wrapped in her coat. Her fingers traced the edge of a folded photograph inside her pocket. Emily's smile, their mother's eyes. She had left the apartment without saying goodbye. It was easier that way. No more promises she could not keep. When the train stopped, a man in a dark coat stood waiting near a black car. He held a simple sign, Mrs. Drake. Claire hesitated, then walked forward. The man did not speak. He opened the door for her. She slid into the back seat. The car was warm, silent, and smooth as it moved. Mountains rose around them, like stone guardians. The road curved along a frozen lake, its surface still and silver. No birds, no people, just winter. Finally, they reached the gates. Iron, tall. They opened without sound. The house appeared slowly, stone and glass, long lines, too clean, too sharp. It looked more like a monument than a home. The car stopped in front of wide steps. Claire stepped out. Cold air wrapped around her ankles. Her boots sank slightly in the snow. Then she saw him. Elliot stood in the doorway, one hand in his coat, one hand resting lightly on the edge of the open door, watching her. "Welcome," he said. His voice was calm, unreadable. Claire nodded. She stepped inside. The floor was dark wood. The ceiling stretched above, like the roof of a cathedral. There was heat in the room, but no warmth, not the kind that came from life. Mrs. Langston appeared from a side hallway. Same gray bun, same smooth, flat voice. "This way, Miss Claire." She walked ahead. Claire followed. They moved past a long corridor lined with black and white photographs, city buildings, distant faces, empty roads. There is a shared kitchen, a reading room, and the music parlor, all within the East Wing. Claire looked up, and the rest, the study and private quarters of Mr. Drake, are located in the West Wing, Mrs. Langston said. "That section is not accessible to you without invitation." Claire nodded once. The house whispered as they walked. No echoes, no warmth in the wood, just silence. They passed a sitting room. A grand piano sat near a tall window, covered, dust barely visible at the edges of the keys. They reached the east corridor, her corridor. At the very end, Mrs. Langston opened a door. "This is your room." Claire stepped inside, large, cold, beautiful in a way that did not comfort. A fire burned behind glass, silent, artificial. There was a bed with white linens, a small sofa, a table with a lamp that hummed when turned on. A single window faced the lake. It stretched wide and gray, frozen all the way to the tree line. On the dresser sat another envelope. Claire opened it. Inside was a single key and a sentence. "You may lock your door at night, if you wish." She read it twice, then placed it back down. That evening, she changed into a dark sweater and soft slacks. She tied her hair back. Her hands trembled slightly. At exactly 7 o'clock, she stepped into the dining room. It was massive, designed for 20 maybe 30 guests, but only two places were set, one at each end of the long table. Elliot stood as she entered, gave a brief nod, then gestured toward the far seat. Claire walked the full length of the table, sat down. Silverware gleamed. Crystal glasses stood, untouched. Dinner arrived quietly. No servers spoke. They moved like shadows. Elliot picked at his food. Claire barely touched hers. After several minutes of silence, she set her fork down. This feels like a hotel. Elliot looked up. It is a home. To you, he paused. I live here. That does not mean I call it home. Claire glanced around. It is beautiful, but very quiet. Elliot nodded. I prefer quiet. Claire leaned forward slightly. Can I ask you something? You already are. She folded her hands in her lap. Why did you build it here? His answer came without emotion. My mother liked the lake. My father liked distance. Claire hesitated. And what do you like? Elliot looked down at his plate. That is not part of our agreement. She said nothing. He stood. I will be in the West Wing. You are free to use any room in yours. Good night. He left before she could respond. Claire sat alone in the cavernous room. The chandelier above her sparkled. The plates gleamed. The fire behind her crackled softly. But it felt like she was sitting inside a museum. That night, unable to sleep. Claire wandered the East Wing. She returned to the music room. The piano still stood beneath its cover. She lifted the cloth gently. Her fingers brushed the keys. They were smooth, clean, tuned. She sat down, played a single note, then another, and then a melody she did not plan. Soft, wandering, not sad, not happy, just honest. It filled the room, filled her chest. When she finished, she sat still for a long time. Somewhere in the West Wing, perhaps, someone had listened, but no one came, no one spoke. The silence remained, but for the first time, she had touched it, and it had not swallowed her. The sky outside had turned from silver to slate. Snow still fell, steady and slow. The lake behind the house was frozen over, not a ripple, not a sound. Claire stood at the window of her room, arms wrapped around herself. The cotton robe she wore felt soft, but thin. A fire glowed behind her, but she did not feel warm. She had not seen Elliot since dinner. No footsteps in the hall, no knock. But she knew the moment was coming. It was part of the agreement, written plainly, a complete marital arrangement, and tonight was the first night. She stared at her reflection in the window. Faint, blurred, a woman she barely recognized, a wife in name, in contract, but not in spirit. She turned from the window and walked slowly to the bed. Laid across the blankets was a silk nightgown, pale ivory, the tag still attached, her name embroidered in tiny letters near the hem. She hesitated, then dressed. She stood in the mirror and looked at herself again, not with vanity, not with fear, just quiet curiosity. Who had she become? The clock ticked past 11. Then came the sound, a soft knock, once, then silence. Claire crossed the room and opened the door. Elliot stood there. No suit tonight, no jacket, just a dark shirt, sleeves rolled, the top buttons open, his hair slightly tousled, his face unreadable. May I come in? He asked. Claire stepped aside. He entered, slowly. His eyes scanned the room, the fire, the bed, her. She closed the door behind them. He stayed near the center of the room, not moving closer. You are afraid, he said. His voice was low, steady. Claire folded her arms. I do not know you. Elliot nodded once. I expected this to be simple. But perhaps it is not. She looked at him. What did you expect? He did not answer right away. Then he said, I expected to fulfill the terms, nothing more. I thought it would be a transaction. Clean, distant. He took one step forward, still far away. But you are not what I expected. Claire raised her chin. And what am I? Elliot studied her. Human, honest, still intact, somehow, after everything. Claire felt her breath catch. And that surprises you. It humbles me. Silence filled the room again. Then Claire spoke. If you came here to claim something, I cannot stop you, but I will not pretend, and I will not break for anyone. Elliot's eyes darkened, not with anger, with something else. He took another step forward. You think I want to break you. I do not know what you want. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached up. His hand moved slowly, deliberately, and he touched her face, just once. A gentle brush of his fingers across her cheek. Claire froze. The touch was light, warm, brief. Then he stepped back, and his voice changed. This was a mistake. Claire blinked. What? Elliot turned toward the door. I thought I could keep this clean, separate, but I cannot. You are not a name on paper. She stared at him. You signed this too. I know. Then why come here tonight? He turned back to her. Because I thought I had to. But when I saw you, I knew I could not. Claire walked closer. You think this is easy for me? No, I do not. Then tell me the truth. Why me? His eyes met hers. I did not choose you out of charity. Then why? He looked down. My father knew your family. Years ago. Something happened. Something I still do not understand. But he told me once, if I ever needed someone who would not lie to me, I should find a Bennett. Claire's chest tightened. My father died 10 years ago. Elliot nodded. I know, but the name stayed with me. Claire stepped back. So this is not just business? No? Then what is it? Elliot exhaled. I do not know yet, but I know I do not want to take anything from you tonight. She said nothing, then walked to the bed, sat on the edge. If you are not here for that, stay, just for a while. Elliot looked at her. You want me to stay. Not as a husband, just a person. So this room does not feel like a cell. He nodded, removed his shoes, sat in the chair near the fire. Neither of them spoke for a long time. The fire flickered, the snow fell. The silence felt different now. Not empty, just still. Claire lay back, eyes open, watching the ceiling. Elliot sat quietly, hands folded, eyes half closed. Time passed, and then she heard it, a soft sound, like breath, like pain. She sat up. Elliot. He did not respond. She walked to the chair. He was awake, barely, a distant look in his eyes, like he was somewhere else. She touched his shoulder. He flinched, then focused. I am sorry, he said. I forgot where I was. Claire sat beside him on the floor. You looked lost. He nodded. Sometimes I forget what quiet is supposed to feel like. She reached for the blanket from the bed, draped it over them both, then leaned her head against the edge of the chair. You do not have to be alone tonight. He said nothing, but his hand found hers and held it. Morning came without sound. Claire woke to a soft gray light. The snow had not stopped. The lake outside her window remained frozen and still. No footprints, no movement, just silence. She stretched beneath the quilt, The fire had burned out during the night. Cold air touched her arms and neck. Elliot was no longer in the room. The chair near the hearth was empty, the blanket folded. The only sign he had been there was the warmth Claire remembered, from his hand in hers. She dressed slowly, pulled on a coat that had been left in the closet. Everything in this house seemed to fit her, as if someone had studied her measurements from a distance. She stepped into the hallway. No sound met her ears, no footsteps, no voices, just the quiet hum of heat running through the hidden vents. Claire wandered toward the music room. The piano cover had been left off. She walked in, sat on the bench, let her fingers settle onto the keys. She played, not with planning, not with purpose, just to hear something real move through the stillness. The notes echoed gently. The room accepted them. When she finished, she noticed a shadow in the doorway. Elliot stood there. He did not interrupt. He only listened. Claire turned toward him. "I did not hear you come in." "You were playing," he said. "I did not want to disturb it. Was it too loud?" "No, this house is not used to music. It surprised me, in a good way." He stepped inside, slowly, as if crossing into memory. "This room once belonged to the woman who raised me," Elliot said. "She used to sit here every morning. She played for the house, for herself, for us." Claire turned to face him fully. "What happened to her?" Elliot walked toward the window. "She passed away 7 years ago. Her heart failed suddenly. No warning." Claire lowered her eyes. "I am sorry." He nodded once. She loved the lake, said it whispered when no one else did. She believed it kept secrets beneath the ice. He glanced at the bench. "My younger sister used to sit beside her. Her name was Elise, full of life, bright, always laughing. She gave the silence its meaning." Claire felt a chill move through her chest. "What happened to her?" Elliot did not answer right away. Then he said, "It was winter, like now. A storm came in fast. Elise took a sled out alone. They did not find her until the next morning." Claire closed her eyes. The pain in his voice was not loud, but it was deep. "I am truly sorry, Elliot." He looked out the window again. "I do not speak of them. Not anymore." She nodded. "But you remember them. That matters." He looked back at her. "Last night, when I heard you play, I remembered what sound used to feel like. It did not hurt as much as I expected." Claire stood, walked to where he stood. "You are allowed to miss them, and still move forward." He gave her a long look, one she could not quite read. Then he turned and left the room. Claire sat back at the piano. This time, she played for Elise. Later that afternoon, Claire wandered through the garden path behind the house. The snow reached past her knees. Her boots crunched gently. The lake stretched wide and pale. She followed a trail through the trees. A narrow path led toward a dock. The dock was dusted with frost. She stepped out onto it, careful and slow. The boards groaned beneath her weight. She sat at the edge and listened. The wind moved softly across the surface of the ice. Somewhere beneath it, Claire imagined echoes, like breath trapped under glass, like the memory of voices too far to reach. She closed her eyes, and for once, she did not feel afraid of the silence. Walking back, she noticed something new. Near the edge of the trees stood a low stone structure, tucked into the hill, partially hidden, a guest house. She followed the buried path that led to its door. The handle was cold, locked, but someone had been there recently. One boot print, large, deep, fresh. Claire stood still for a long moment, then knocked. No answer. She turned to go, heart suddenly louder in her chest. Back inside the main house, the air felt warmer. The light had shifted. Late afternoon now. The sun low and pale through the tall windows. In her room, a tray had been left on the small table. Dinner for one. Beside it, a folded note. Mr. Drake is occupied with meetings. You may dine in your quarters. Claire ate slowly, then opened her journal. She wrote about the lake, about the dock, about the shadow of the girl named Elise. She wrote, "There is sorrow here, but it lives next to something else. Memory. Maybe even peace." Just before bed. Claire returned to the music room. No one stood in the hallway. No footsteps followed her. She sat at the piano, let her fingers rest on the keys. Then she played, not to fill the silence, but to speak to it. And the house listened. The snow had stopped. For the first time since Claire arrived, sunlight touched the windows, pale, golden, faint as breath. But it was there. It changed the color of the house, made it seem softer, less like stone. Claire stepped into the hallway. Her boots tapped gently against the polished floor. She had memorized this wing, its quiet corners, its clean silence. Today, something pulled her elsewhere. She walked past the music room, past the sitting room, toward the end of the main corridor. Where east faded into west, the air changed, not colder, but heavier. She paused at a door she had not touched before. It stood quietly, like the rest, but this one had no handle, just a panel beside it, smooth and silver. She pressed her fingers to it. Nothing happened. Claire stepped back. She had been told not to enter the West Wing, but the hallway continued just a little farther. Curiosity led her on. The next door was old, wooden, slightly worn near the base, locked. A small keypad blinked red. She did not know why her pulse quickened, but it did. A sound broke the silence behind her. She turned. It was Harold, the groundskeeper. He stood with a broom in one hand, his jacket dusted with snow. "Should not be back here, Miss Claire," he said kindly. She stepped away from the door. "I was just walking," Harold nodded. "Understandable. The house invites wandering. But that side?" He trailed off. Claire waited. He cleared his throat. "Just best to leave it alone." She looked at him closely. "You have been here a long time. Have you not?" "Since before Elliot was born," he said, voice soft. "I worked for his father. Watched the family grow and shrink." He gave her a small smile. "Some doors are closed for good reason." Claire nodded, but something in her chest tugged. That afternoon, she found the old photo album. It was tucked in a drawer near the fireplace. The pages smelled of age, paper, and dust. She flipped slowly. There were black and white photos of the lake, of the original foundation of the house, of a young boy grinning beside a sled, and then a girl, Elise. Claire touched the page gently. She was laughing, holding a snow globe in her hands. Behind her stood the piano, the same one in the music room. Next to that photo was another. A man Claire had not seen before. Not Elliot, not Harold, younger, strong jaw, light hair. Something in his expression unsettled her. She turned the page. The photo was gone, torn out. A jagged edge remained. That night, Claire asked Mrs. Langston about the West Wing. The housekeeper paused before answering. "It is private." "Yes, but why?" Mrs. Langston's eyes met hers. "There are things Mr. Drake does not revisit. Rooms that hold too much memory. He keeps that part of the house closed. It is not personal. Claire nodded slowly. But it is not just about memory. Is it, Mrs. Langston said nothing more. That evening, Claire played the piano again. This time, the melody had weight, like footsteps in the snow, like breath behind a closed door. When she stopped, she felt it, a presence, not seen, but near. She turned. The hallway was empty, but the fire had dimmed, and one page from the photo album now rested beside the music bench. The torn photo, someone had placed it there. The man again, this time, standing beside a younger Elliot. Claire picked it up. On the back was a date, November 2nd. No year. Just that. Claire took the photo to her room. She studied the man's face. He looked like Elliot, but sharper, colder, like marble. She turned the photo over again, then slipped it into her journal. The next morning, she asked Elliot directly. They sat in the sunroom. The lake behind them shimmered beneath frost. "Who is he?" she asked, holding up the photo. Elliot did not take it. He only stared, then answered, "My uncle." Claire waited. "He lived here, after my father died, helped with the business, for a while. And now," Elliot's voice hardened, "he is gone." "Why was the photo torn out?" Elliot stood, his hands folded. "Some memories are poison, Claire." She looked up at him. "Then why did someone leave this for me?" He paused, then said, "Maybe they want you to see what I have tried to forget." He left the room. Claire remained seated, the photo heavy in her hand. She felt something shift inside her, not fear, but knowing. There were secrets in this house, and someone wanted her to find them. Claire kept the photo with her all day. She tucked it inside the pocket of her coat, not hidden, not exposed, just close enough to feel its weight. Outside, the snow had hardened into glassy sheets. The lake stretched wide and silent, framed by branches of bare trees. She walked along the edge of the estate, boots crunching over ice. Each step came with questions, not about Elliot, but about the man in the photo, that unfamiliar face, standing beside a younger version of Elliot. The photo had been torn out, removed, left in silence, but someone had placed it back in her path. She needed to know why. Near the greenhouse, Harold was salting the walk. Claire approached quietly. "Do you recognize this man?" she asked. Harold looked up. His face changed. He wiped his hands on his coat before answering. "That man is Maxwell Drake." "Who is he?" "The brother of James Drake, Elliot's father." Claire watched Harold's expression shift from caution to something heavier. "He helped manage the company after James passed, lived here for a while, made himself very comfortable. Why is there no mention of him? No photos, no stories?" Harold leaned on his shovel. Because he left behind more scars than memories. He was charming when it suited him, cold when it did not, and not everyone survived what he brought into this house. Claire lowered her voice. "What happened to him?" Harold looked at the frozen lake. "He was given a choice, leave quietly, or face the storm he created." He paused. "I do not know what Elliot told you, but that man left pieces behind, pieces that still shift the air." Claire nodded slowly. That night, she waited until the house went quiet. Then she entered the study. Elliot sat alone, reading. A fire glowed behind the thick glass wall. Light moved across his face, casting soft lines beneath his eyes. She held out the photo. "I need you to tell me the truth." Elliot set the book down without speaking. He looked at the photo, then walked to the fireplace. "That man is my uncle, Maxwell." "And what did he do?" Elliot exhaled, his voice low and steady. After my father died, Maxwell came into the company, into the house. He said he was there to help, and for a time, he did. He turned, but it was all strategy. He wanted control of the estate, of the legacy, of her. Claire felt her pulse shift. You mean the woman who raised you? Yes, she never trusted him. She saw the way he twisted things. He tried to separate her from the company. Said she was grieving, unstable. Said I was too young. And Elise, Elliot nodded. She was the youngest. She loved him at first, believed him. He made her feel seen, important. But he used that trust to hurt my mother and to break our family from the inside. Claire swallowed. And then she died. Elliot stared at the fire. After a fight with Maxwell, it was cold. She ran outside, did not come back. He looked at her now. Some things do not need proof to be true. Claire stepped closer. Did you ever confront him? Not then. But I watched. And later, I found what he tried to hide. Financial reports, diversions of company funds, documents signed with my father's name months after his death. Claire's breath caught. Forgery. Yes. I found a page torn from the album. Someone left it for me to find. Elliot nodded slowly. He never got over being passed over. My father left the company to me, not to him. Maxwell saw Elise as his tool. When she was gone, he blamed me. Blamed everyone but himself. Where is he now? Gone. I gave him the option to vanish. He took it. Claire glanced toward the window. The West Wing belonged to him. Yes, after he left, I closed it, locked it. That part of the house holds too much. But someone has been there. Elliot turned to her sharply. How do you know? I saw a boot print, fresh. I found this photo beside the piano. Someone wants me to see what you locked away. Elliot remained silent for a long time, then said, I once trusted him. That was my mistake. I will not repeat it. She stepped beside him. You said Maxwell mentioned my father. That there was a connection? Elliot nodded. Years ago, he spoke of a deal, something financial. He said your father signed off on a file that ruined a merger. I never followed the trail. I should have. Claire's voice tightened. My father lived with shame and died with questions. And now, I am caught in something neither of us asked for. Not by choice, Elliot said. Claire looked at him. Then we stop being quiet. We go where the silence began. Elliot nodded once. Tomorrow, I will open the West Wing. Claire turned to leave. Before she reached the door, Elliot said, You should know. Maxwell kept journals. If anything remains, it will be in there. Claire paused. Then that is what we will find. The key turned with a soft click. Claire stood beside Elliot in the narrow corridor. The door to the West Wing loomed tall and dark. Dust had settled across the frame, but the air behind it felt oddly untouched. Elliot held the key in his palm for a long moment before opening the door fully. They stepped inside together. The hallway beyond was dim. Heavy curtains blocked what little sunlight remained. The wood beneath their feet creaked softly with every step. Claire glanced at Elliot. His jaw was tight. His hands stayed folded behind his back. These rooms have not been touched since the day he left, Elliot said. Claire nodded. They moved slowly. The West Wing felt different, colder. Still, the first room they entered was an office. Dark wood lined the walls. A heavy desk sat at the center. Bookshelves surrounded it, filled with old finance manuals, leather-bound ledgers, and dust-covered journals. Claire walked toward the desk. Is this where he worked? Elliot nodded. He called it the war room, said deals were battles, and people were weapons. She ran her hand across the surface, smooth, clean, but cold. Elliot opened a drawer. Inside were several thick notebooks, plain covers, labeled by season. He pulled out one marked Winter, Year 12. Claire opened it carefully. The handwriting was small, precise, entire pages filled with calculations, names, strategies, meetings, manipulations, and notes about her father. She read aloud. Jonathan Bennett, contact through third party, willing to shift blame, motivated by fear. Her hand froze. Shift blame. Elliot stepped closer. Read the next page. She turned it. Another entry. Final draft signed. Distraction successful. Claire mentioned once. Should keep ties clean. Claire sat down. Her voice was barely above a whisper. He knew my name. Before all of this. Elliot read over her shoulder. He planned it all. Used your father to cover the embezzlement, then tied your name to the papers in case someone traced it back. Claire's throat tightened. My father must have been terrified. He had no way out. He was a shield, Elliot said. A name Maxwell could hide behind while bleeding the company dry. Claire looked up. He framed him, used him, and we never knew. She stood. This is not just about Elise, or your mother, or the company. He did this to families. Mine. Yours. All for control. Elliot walked to the far cabinet. He opened it slowly. Inside was a small locked box. Metal. Heavy. Claire watched as he entered a code. It clicked open. Inside were old photos, a recording device, and a folded letter. Elliot handed her the letter. The handwriting was faint, feminine. Claire read quietly. It was from the woman who raised Elliot, addressed to Maxwell, unsent. You do not frighten me. I see what you are. I see how you twist what is kind into something cruel. You turned Elise against me. You turned Elliot into a stranger to himself. Claire blinked. She knew. Elliot read the letter too. I never saw this. He picked up the recording device, pressed play. A voice crackled to life. Maxwell. You think I care about her? She is just a girl. I made her. I can replace her. Another voice responded. The woman. Calm. Firm. You are poison. Then silence. The tape stopped. Claire stepped back. This is enough to destroy him. Elliot placed the recorder on the desk. He already destroyed himself, but now the world can know. He turned to her. And so can you. The truth. No more shadows. Claire looked at him. Her voice shook. I need to go home, to my mother. I need to tell her my father was not a coward. He was a man caught in a storm. Elliot stepped forward. I will take you there. You should not carry this alone. She nodded. Tears welled in her eyes, but did not fall. Outside, snow had begun again, but this time, the house did not feel so cold. 3 days later, the snow had melted into soft patches along the edges of the road. Claire stood outside the house where she grew up. A small white fence still lined the porch. The mailbox leaned slightly forward, as if trying to greet her. Inside, her mother waited in the same chair by the window. Eyes tired, hands folded, Claire sat beside her and told her everything. Not all at once, not with anger, with truth. Her mother listened without interrupting. Only once did her hand tremble, when Claire said, "He was protecting us." Her mother looked away. I always wondered why he stopped singing in the mornings. Now I know. They sat in silence for a long time. Then her mother said, "You have your father's heart. You hold pain quietly, but not without purpose." Claire nodded. That night, she watched old home videos, her father laughing, holding baby Emily in his arms, singing off key to make them smile. The next morning, Elliot arrived. He did not come to the door. He waited near the garden gate, hands in his coat pockets. Claire stepped outside. The sky was clear. They stood in silence for a few moments. Then Claire said, "You kept your promise. I said I would bring you, and you did not rush me. You needed space." Claire looked at him. "And you?" Elliot breathed slowly. "I went to the board. I gave them the letters, the recordings, everything. They voted to open an investigation." She looked down. "Will that destroy the company?" "No. It will free it." They walked together to the edge of the street. Elliot paused. "There is something I want to show you." He opened the car door. Inside, on the seat, was a ring box. Claire did not touch it. "I already have a ring. This one is not part of a contract." He opened the box. Inside was a small, simple silver band. No diamonds, no conditions. "I do not expect anything," he said. "I just want to ask." Claire looked at him, unsure. Then Elliot spoke again. "This house, this life, everything I had before you arrived. It was quiet, cold. I thought that was safety." He paused. "You showed me that silence is not peace. You gave this place music again." He closed the box. "I want to know what we could become, without obligations, without guilt, just a choice." Claire said nothing. Her eyes moved to the trees nearby. A breeze shook the branches gently. Then she smiled and reached for his hand. "I do not want to be saved. I know. And I do not want to be owned. You never were." Claire took the ring box from him. "I want to choose." Elliot nodded once. She opened the box again, took out the ring, and slipped it into her coat pocket. "Not yet," she said. Elliot looked confused. "I want to come back to Lake Haven," Claire added, "but not as a wife. Not right away." He waited. "I want to teach music in that room again. I want to open it to others. Let children learn there. Let them laugh again." Elliot smiled softly. That room was always hers. "It will be yours now." Claire looked into his eyes. "And you?" "I will be there," Elliot said, "even if I am just the man who carries piano benches." Claire laughed. It was small, but real. The wind picked up, and they turned back toward the car. Weeks passed. The house changed. The West Wing remained closed, not out of fear, but out of choice. A new sign was placed near the music room, the Elise Drake Studio for Youth Arts. Inside, sunlight touched the keys. Claire sat beside a small boy. He tapped a note, uncertain. She nodded. "Try again." Laughter came from the hallway. Children ran past. Elliot leaned in the doorway, watching quietly. He no longer wore black every day. Claire still kept the silver ring in her coat, not because she was unsure, but because she wanted to choose it when the moment felt like music. One afternoon, she sat alone in the room, played a simple tune, the same one Elise once played in the old photo. Elliot entered. He did not speak. He sat beside her. Their hands touched, and she said, "Now." He looked at her. Claire pulled the silver band from her pocket, held out her hand. Elliot placed the ring on her finger. No priest, no lawyer, no paper, just the sound of a piano behind them, and the memory of snow falling softly across the lake. The past had not disappeared. It had become part of the music, each note built on something lost and something found. Sometimes we carry burdens that are not ours to begin with. Claire lived in silence, not because she wanted to, but because duty, love, and survival often ask us to hold back our own needs. Her journey reminds us of something gentle but true, that love without understanding is just a performance. And truth, even when painful, is the beginning of healing. Eliot learned this too. Power cannot fix grief. Control cannot replace what is lost, but connection can, even between strangers, even inside a cold house. This story speaks to anyone who has ever given up a piece of themselves for family, for peace, for a second chance. And it teaches us this, that we are never too old to choose again, to forgive, to open the door we once locked, to love in a way that is no longer about obligation, but about presence. The past may shape us, but it does not have to trap us. Sometimes, the quietest stories are the ones that hold the most light. Thank you for listening to this story. If it touched your heart or made you think of someone you love, please give it a like. Share it with a friend who might need a gentle reminder that healing is possible. And do not forget to subscribe to our channel. There are more stories waiting. Stories about hope, about loss, about choosing love, even when it feels far away. We are grateful to have you here. See you in the next story.